My name is Casey Hersch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, author, and founder of LightYourSparkle.life. Today I'm here with a very special guest, Melora Hardin. She's known for her portrayal of Jan Levinson on the NBC series The Office. She was Emmy nominated in 2016 for her role of Tammy Cashman on Amazon's Golden Globe winning comedy Transparent. This year, she wrapped up the fifth and final season of the freeform series The Bold Type, where she starred as Jacqueline Carlisle. And we just saw her compete in the 30th season of ABC's Dancing with the Stars, where she made it to the semifinals with her professional partner, Artem. In 2022, she is going to be releasing a docuseries called Thunder, Hunter, and Me. Many years ago, Melora played the role as Cindy in a series called Thunder. Thunder's a horse. And there was a young girl named Hunter who was watching the series and always wished that Melora's character Cindy could come through the television screen and rescue her because Hunter was going through some trauma. Many years later, Melora and Hunter met and their relationship cultivated this lovely docuseries all about how to help people who are going through trauma and how to talk to them about it. And so this will be coming out in 2022, and we're going to be talking to Melora about what went into the series and about her relationship with Hunter and how that helped transcend trauma. Let's get started. Melora, thank you for spending time with me today.
You're very, very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
And before we get started, if we can take a moment, I want to share with you why I reached out to you.
Okay.
So, I'm a psychotherapist, a Latin ballroom dancer, and a patient who lives with an autoimmune illness called Crohn's disease, complicated by a history of childhood trauma. I was particularly drawn to your journey on Dancing with the Stars because you captured the essence of a relatable human in her 50s, challenging herself by trying something new that provokes vulnerability, tests physical limits, and unlocks judgments about body image, aging, and emotional honesty. However, when I learned about your work on the docuseries Thunder, Hunter, and Me, I felt so grateful that you were normalizing conversations about trauma and showing the strength of authentic relationships to heal. And I just had to learn more. So, like you, I'm passionate about giving voice to childhood trauma and helping people transform their traumas into opportunities for post traumatic growth. And the relationship between my childhood trauma and the development of Crohn's disease compelled me to write a book called Running on a Broken Foot, where I show people through intimate episodes in my own life how my childhood adverse experiences laid a foundation for mental and physical illness in my adult life. However, as you've shared about your work with Hunter, I too emphasize how to help people find strength from their trauma and to get unstuck so they can thrive in the present. And in my case, ballroom dance and the relationships with a few people in my life who showed me, I see you, I get you, changed the course of my illnesses. And the parallels between your dancing journey and your relationship with Hunter really drew me to you. And today I want to dive deeper into some of my observations and inspire others through your journey.
Oh, how beautiful. Well, thank you. That's such a beautiful, you made me emotional. That's very beautiful.
Well,
um, Way to welcome me on your show. That's really lovely.
I appreciate you as well. So we're going to hopefully talk about some of these things that are, I think, really dear to you, but also dear to me. So it's mutual.
That's great.
So, in one of your scenes from the series, The Bold Type, your character talks about body positivity and says that body positivity is about self love and self acceptance, which is very healthy. Can you explain what this statement means to you?
Um, I think that, one of our greatest things on this planet and being a human and the human experience is that we have this ability as humans to have a sensual experience of life. And one of our greatest senses is the sense of taste. And and I think that there's so much focus on, you know, an outside sort of view of what it is to be human that that I think a lot of times people forget to just connect to the actual pure pleasure of one of the like simplest pleasures we have is this ability to experience the pleasure of food, the pleasure of taste, the pleasure of fueling our bodies with food and giving our bodies a chance to be strong and healthy and to thrive and to indulge sometimes in things that we like the way they taste. But I think people forget to feel. They go outside of their bodies, and of course, what I do in my career is all about getting inside of the way that I feel as a character, or as a filmmaker, or and so I think that that's really a lot of what body positivity is. It's reconnecting with the way you feel about your body, the way you feel about the fact that our bodies are our vehicles to go through life. They are what we've been given to have this human experience that is different from our soul experience or our spiritual experience or even our intellectual experience. They are just a vehicle. And so if we take our cars to the car wash and we change the oil and we change the tires and we put snow tires on and we put summer, it's unfortunate that so many people have gotten so warped in their sense of what it is to be connected to your own body, that they don't take their own body to the car wash. They don't take their own body. They don't think of their body in that way. And instead they think of it as it has to look a certain way. And I'm really all about how does it feel? And and even with this whole pandemic, I wish that we had used this as an opportunity to really help people connect to the health of our physical forms and our body. And I don't think that it's a positive thing to speak about body shaming and that kind of thing in terms of it's okay to be obese. Like, I think that's not, it's not okay, not because it looks bad. It's not okay because it's bad for your organs. It's bad for your health. It's bad for the hospital situation. It's bad for diabetes. It's bad for your human experience to be able to thrive. And so I think that we're just really backwards in a lot of the way that we talk about body image, body acceptance. I just personally feel that we should connect to the sort of sober up about it and simplify the conversation, which is really should be, to me, more about, it's not about the pounds or the way it looks. It's about the way it feels, and it's about working towards taking the best care of the vehicle that you have to go through this lifetime with the most reverence that you can, which includes the enjoyment of food, the enjoyment of physical activity, the enjoyment of feeling your body. And you don't feel your body as well when you are many pounds overweight. And I think that there's just been a real warped thing about that I think is really been a real missed opportunity. That's a hard conversation to have, because people will often say, well, you're saying that's body shaming. And I'm kind of like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about that at all. I really think that you need to love yourself in order to make any kind of change. You have to start by loving yourself. And I just don't think change should be about, what it looks like. I think it should be about what it feels like and what is best for your mechanism to perform in this lifetime.
Yeah, Melora, that is that is really profound what you just said, and I thank you for saying it, because I think what you just said and the way that you described it is a way of describing body positivity that people are uncomfortable saying. And the way that you're describing it, where you're talking about all the senses, you know, it's touch, it's taste, it's emotion, it's all of this rich experience that we have on the inside. And you're also talking about the idea that, you know, health is really important. And when we're during a time during the pandemic where so many people are vulnerable to this viral insult, there is so much empowerment that comes from working from the inside out to help yourself gather strength and immunity. And all of that comes from, you know, from basically this understanding that your body is so much more than this thing you're packing around. So you said a lot of points that I'm really happy you're a role model for women and men, because someone needs to be saying the things that you just said. So thank you for that.
Oh, good.
So, you know, that kind of goes to your experience on Dancing with the Stars, because you're in the spotlight a lot and it requires a lot of time in front of the mirror when you're dancing, which often provokes a lot of feelings and insecurities for people. So after this experience for you, when you look in the mirror now, do you see the same Melora?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I've always had dance in my life, and I think that for me, ballroom is so different. It is sort of like being a baseball player and then being asked to, you know, throw a football on a football team. Um, but I always found, and it's interesting because I started ballet so young when I was like 5, and I was really determined I was going to be a ballerina. That was really what my first fantasy of what I was going to be when I grew up, and sort of my first dream. And I have always found going to dance class, and I've actually talked about this with friends, that there is something very different about looking in the mirror when you're working, when you're dancing like that, because when you're dancing, you're, at least for me, I'm working to do something with my body. So I'm working to create a better line, to create the picture, and to keep working towards that showing up the way I want it to, with repetition. And so there was something, it is sort of like a very self-centered moment, but it's like self-centered in a way that is productive and relaxing, because you're not looking in the mirror to go like, how beautiful am I, or what wrinkle do I have, or where's my gray hair, or, you know, you're not, or where am I fat, or whatever. You're looking in the mirror to go, is that right? Is that line right? Or is it close to right? And how do I get it closer to right? And how do I keep working to make that beautiful, to make that stronger, to make that more effective? And so I think that in general has translated for me into my life. And I think it's one of the things that makes me a really good director, because, and also as an actor, I'm a rare actor in the sense that I can, you know, there's a thing called dailies, which is when you get to see the you know, the scenes that you shot the day before, you can see them the next day. And it's a thing that you know, historically, when we would shoot everything on film when I was younger, they would withhold that from the actors. They wouldn't let the actors see those dailies, because so many actors would freak out and be like, oh my God, my hair was out of place, or I look fat, or whatever they would do. And I really think it is this dancing thing and this ability to look in the mirror sort of objectively, almost like it's self-centered, and yet you're removed from yourself because you're focusing on something other than yourself. And so I'm one of those rare actors that actually can watch dailies and and can watch myself with a lot of objectivity. And it actually behooves me very much as a director, because I can really see things from perspective, like 30,000 feet up looking down, rather than being right up in it, like it's me, and it says things about me or means something about me. I can see when things are hitting, when they're landing, when they're not landing. So yeah, I think that is the mirror sort of training from having ballet in my life as long as I did, and as seriously as I did, and as passionately as I did, because I had this relationship with the mirror from a very young age that was really, really different than most people's relationship with their mirror.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is really interesting to me, because when I first started ballroom dancing, I had such a history of trauma that I really wasn't comfortable looking at myself, and I wasn't comfortable being in my body, and I was so overwhelmed by looking in the mirror. It was like a sensory overload, and I hear that a lot from people when they first start dancing. But there is this process where I think you start to have this friendship with the mirror in such a way that it's sort of like the messenger that points out these really important gifts to you that help you be able to grow. And it feels like, that objectivity where you're using it as a way to really not be so inside of all the external stuff, the color in your face, like you were saying, and all of that. And you're able to detach from that enough to be able to really look at the big picture, which is sort of a metaphor for life, really. Like, how do we step outside of ourselves and look at a bigger picture? It feels like, you were able to use this process in that way.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
So, the media, of course, in the entertainment industry place a lot of value on youthful appearances and slowing and even stopping aging through Botox, cosmetic procedures, makeup, almost as though aging is bad. Can you share how you navigate aging as a celebrity and as an aging woman in her 50s?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky because I've always had older people in my life. I had my grandparents like late into my 30s. My parents now are quite old and they're in my lives. So I have a lot of respect and understanding and enjoyment of older people.
Mm.
And I also just feel like there are so many things about life that get clearer and better, and get less less burdensome as you get older, and you get more maturity, and you get more life experience, and you have more more tools to draw from, and more lessons learned. And so I guess to me it's just my dad, who's 92 as of a week ago.
Oh, congratulations, Dad.
Yeah, he always said, you got to celebrate every birthday you have, because there's only one other option.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just feel like, I guess that's sort of how I feel about it. I feel like because I've had old people in my life, I've always felt like I'm going to be old. I feel like, sort of I have my eye on dying at 111, just because I like 111. That's an angel number and I like it. I don't know if I'll make it that far, but I feel like I've always sort of had my eye on that, and that I want to be a healthy, vital old person. I don't want to be a decrepit, So that means I started very young taking care of myself that way. I think it's good to perceive ourselves at a certain place. It's like, I remember once dating a guy who said to me, did you always have a vision for for like the kind of relationship you want, the kind of man you want? And I remember saying, yeah, that's ever evolving. I was very, very young, but I was like, that's ever evolving, and that's changing with each relationship I have. But yes, I have a picture of what I want. I want this in a partnership, and I want children, and I want old age, and I want vitality, and I want health, and I want, success. And those are things that it's good for us to hold those things, because it's like you want to be going towards those things, those visions. It's like creating visions for ourselves, those vision boards, or
Sure.
And so I think really that's what it is. It's like aging is a part of life. And then of course I have a very wise friend who says, the sooner we can get in relationship with loss, the more joy we're going to have in our life. We start losing things from the day we're born.
That's right.
Literally the day we're born, we start losing things. And you see that in our culture. You mentioned Botox and plastic surgery and all those things. And that, to me, that's people who are desperately trying to hold on to something that has already been lost to them.
Yeah.
And instead of that, just get into relationship with you can have grief about loss, but you also, if you kind of get into a sober relationship about it, and you realize that we are losing things from the day we're born, then we actually can decide to lose things. Yeah. We can decide to say, I'm one of those people, let's say like me, I'm one of those people who, there was for many, many years, I used to have a Coca-Cola at lunch every day. And then I realized at a certain point in my health, in my body, that wasn't good for me. And so I literally stopped doing that. And I haven't had a Coca-Cola in 20 some odd years. And I don't miss it. But for the first 4 or 5 weeks of taking Coca-Cola out of my diet, I missed it. Yeah. But I was just in relationship with the missing of it. I was in relationship with, I'm choosing my health over the taste of Coca-Cola, which, by the way, I got to have for the first 25 years of my life. So what's the problem? And why are we so desperate to hold on to something that we've already had a really great run with? Like, it's like really great. You get to do something for 25 years and then you decide not to do it anymore. Great. And then there's going to be other things that I'm going to decide not to do. And, so that's really how I deal with that, with aging. And that's what I think is, to me, the healthiest way to deal with it. And, and that's not to say there's not going to be things that you have sadness about losing, because you do, and you will. I mean, I'm not 18, so my leg doesn't go as high when I'm dancing on Dancing with the Stars as it did when I was 18, when I could get it flat to my face and I could roll through my split and I could do all that. I can't roll through my split anymore. And sure, I have moments where I'm like, damn, I can't roll through my split. But then I have other moments where I'm like, damn, I can do a lot. I can do a lot that for 54, because I've had some consistency, because I continue to prioritize my vision for old age, my vision for my life. And I'm sure some of that will come true and some of that will be totally different than I imagined. And I'll have to grapple with that.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, Melora, when you talk about the relationship that you've had with older adults and the elderly. Because, we talk about in social work in my profession that we are more and more detached from seniors, older adults, elderly, however you define that generation, more and more and more. When I was a kid, my volunteer time I spent at a long-term assisted living long-term facility in a hospital. And I played the piano for residents, Christmas music at the holidays. And I spent time with these lovely, lovely souls. And so I got really close to that process of aging as well. And my survival and my resilience came from relationships with these elders who, and I've always been surrounded by women and men who are much older than me. And so I love that the way that you've talked about this idea of grief, because we are a society that really just wants to avoid grief. And there are these overwhelming, powerful, necessary losses that we have in our life. And there's a great book that I, read in my field about necessary losses. And it really does kind of all come down to our struggles that we have with letting go. But like you say, from the moment that we're born, we've already had loss immediately. From the moment that we leave the womb, losses start. So well, I really appreciate that interpretation of of aging. It's great.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, for a young person who insists that they're not worthy if they don't change themselves to fit society's model of beauty, what would you say to them?
Oh, I mean, I would just say like look outside your window. Like, go and walk in the forest and look at all the leaves that are, how different they are and how beautiful the most crinkled jagged, strange, dotted, spotted leaf can be next to a perfectly shiny green, beautifully shaped leaf. And that this idea of what beauty is it really is some concept. And you can either, I just think that our young people have a real disadvantage in the sense that there's so much promotion online of what is right, what is good, what is beautiful, what is true, and there's this cancel culture that is so evil, and this inability to to see things from other sides, this inability to uphold and to revere critical thinking, and to question and to debate and to discuss and to disagree with open hearts and open minds. And that this is how it shows up. It shows up in these mental illnesses with young people who are so self-focused and so turned in on themselves that they have no ability to see the world that they are living in and communing with the world. And picking up a handful of dirt and watching sand run through your fingers and feeling the sun on your face and getting outside of your bubble. And that takes discipline, and that takes leaders, and that takes guidance, and that takes teachers. And right now, the world is not looking like that. The world on the nightly news, and the politicians and the government and the courts and the teachers and the universities and are looking very much more homogenized than ever before, and very much more critical of any divergence of opinion or disagreement with the popular idea or thinking or rhetoric. And it's very worrisome to me, and really upsetting that we can't have these conversations, and that we can't speak across party lines, and that we can't learn, and we can't be an emblem. The people that are at the top of our cultural pyramid can't be an emblem and an example of what it is to negotiate and to respect differences, and to include questions, and to include concerns. And so I think that's where it stems from. I think it stems from this overemphasis on homogenization, and everyone being like everyone else, and everyone agreeing with the party line, and everyone, and and if you don't agree, you're the bad guy and we're the good guy, or you're the good guy and I'm the bad. It's mind-boggling to me, but it is so much pressure. It is so much pressure. And you see just how, even in the pandemic, how the lockdowns have affected mental illness, and this incredible intensity of looking inward. And this school shooting that just happened, I'm fascinated to find out what's going through this young man's mind, that he feels this is, and he's calling for help, and he's not getting help, and he's being given the weapon that he can do this with. And to me, it's a very small, detailed picture of a larger problem that's going on around the world. And so to me, that's, I know that's way off mark from what your question was, but to me, that's the bigger question. And so I would just say the thing you can do to not be consumed by this very large problem is that you can commune with nature. You can literally just go outside and appreciate. It really is not a saying for nothing, stop and smell the roses, but it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
really look at what makes the things around us beautiful and sensual, and spend time there, and spend, cry there and grieve there and laugh there and commune there with friends and family, and just, but this is the discipline that most young people don't have, and they don't have anyone leading them
Right.
to that.
I love that that's what you would say to a young person, because when we work with kids, a lot of times I notice that kids don't have that idea of being able to orient outside of their body. And so one of the exercises that you use a lot of times with youth and adults when there's that disconnect with themselves is you help them orient to a smell, or look out the window and notice the sky, and look at the like details of a leaf or a mushroom, or even just a color, the color spectrum like involved in just the color orange. So this like idea of orienting is almost so foreign to our youth and to even us. You obviously, this is a big part of your life, but that we almost have to like bring it back, and we actually have to describe it and use it, as an intervention. And vision, that idea of looking into the future with an idea of how you want to be. I enjoy in ballroom dance that, I get to love what I do, but at the same time there's this category called the senior division. And so as soon as you like pass over into like 35, you're considered a senior. And so I find that to be just, there's nothing wrong with being called a senior, but along with that, it's loaded with a bunch of like ideas. Like you can't compete with those young amateurs in their 20s. And there's this energy around it. And so I hold this vision for myself that I am going to dance in my 90s. And if I live to be 100, I am still going to dance. Because when you start to imagine yourself differently, then you sort of become that. I mean, that's just kind of, Oprah was right when she said, make the vision board.
Totally, totally. I mean, I think that's amazing. And, and I think that's something that, that we were talking about a lot on Dancing with the Stars. I mean, Artem, my partner, was saying that like, he would say sometimes in press, like, Melora's competing with people that are a third of her age, and it's not like oh, we're gonna let this older lady compete with these people in their 30s.
Yes.
It's like she's really competing, like she's actually competition for them, and
Heck yeah.
competition for the 18-year-olds.
Yep.
She's competition for them. She's not
it.
just like, it's not just like, well, she can kind of do it. It's like,
Yeah.
no, she's actually doing it.
You
Like,
did it. Yeah, and your Roomba, by the way, as someone who understands the
who
technique,
understands how hard a rumba is.
to like embody the essence of that dance truly, like you rocked that baby, and I was like, okay, not right, but it's okay. Moving on.
It's
So
true. I did. I know I did. And
I saw it. I mean, I watched you, and I'm like so respectful of that, because as someone who works on those nuances every day,
it's a lot.
it's really hard to do that, especially when you're just learning it. Like it's rarely ever done like that. So
Thank you. Well,
kudos.
I had all the female pros.
I know. I'd
and
imagine.
even Derek was like,
Yes.
like all those pros were like sitting back there, and all the females came up to me and said, I've never seen a female celebrity on this show ever dance the rumba as perfectly technically as you just did.
Bingo. Yeah.
So that was enough for me. And, I'm still going to talk to Carrie Ann about, I don't know what she was talking about, picking up my feet, because Artem was very, very specific about details. He would have told me if that was a lift and I was supposed to keep my feet on the ground. And if he had told me that, my feet would have been on the ground.
Yep.
But that was never, he said it's never been judged as a lift, and it's never been a problem when you like go from foot to foot. It's not like I'm like lifting me, Anyway, the point being that, everybody has their things. But I'll run that by Carrie Ann at some point.
Okay,
What
good.
the heck were you talking about?
Oh my. So okay, let's shift a little bit. So I know your docuseries Thunder Hunter and Me will be available to the public in the near future.
Hopefully in 2022 we'll have it out for everybody to see.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Awesome. And in the meantime, I've listened to what you've said about the story, and you share that after sensing Hunter's struggles with close relationships, you asked Hunter if she was a victim of rape. And, your courage in asking Hunter these difficult and honest questions is really what all of us should be doing with each other. We should be asking the question, what happened to you? So, what advice can you give to people who are struggling to bring up these difficult conversations?
Well, I think that first of all, I think there's a really important piece here, which is that Hunter was asking me for my help from the beginning of the conversation. She was calling me, and the way she couched it was, I want to ask you some questions, and I can't think of anyone else to ask these questions to but you. So that put me into a position of being able to understand that she was ready to hear my answers. She invited me to really connect to my truth, and I'm trained to feel my instincts in a very deep way. That's what I do for a living, and I'm trained to act on my instincts. And but I do think that by asking me those questions, she was giving me permission, and she was asking me to step into that very tricky place. And I think that's why a lot of people feel uneasy there, because they don't know whether they're invited in. And I think that is an important piece, because I think people that have had extreme trauma, or just trauma, everyone's had some kind of trauma, but I mean, some people are so terrified, and they're so terrified that they don't know how to ask. And even when I talked to Hunter about, she tried so many times to get people to ask. And she's so grateful that I'm one of those people that she says that I have a bulldozer, and that my bulldozer comes in, and a bulldozer is about moving things. It's about picking things up and moving them, and moving big boulders out of the way, and displacing things. And one of the things in our film that we talk about is, when Hunter was raped at 7, it was a huge interruption in her innocence. It was a huge interruption in her life. And it was almost like I had to be just as big of an interruption to start the healing.
Yeah.
But she was ready for the healing, and she wanted the healing. And I wouldn't have ever been able to bring her what I brought her without her being as hungry to change and to grow and to move in this direction. And she calls me her shepherd. And, it's like I always say to her, like, you take direction so beautifully. Like, I just sort of lead, there's that saying, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. I kept leading her to water holes and water holes and water holes. And she kept going, like, I'm going to drink from there. I'm going to drink from there. I'm going to drink from there, whenever it resonated with her. And I was always looking to her to see where it felt really true and resonant for her. But it just seemed like everything I brought to her just felt resonant. And I said, really, what my commitment was is I would be there with her. I would hold her hand through it, because it wasn't threatening to me in the same way it was threatening for her. And I knew that I had the passion, and I had the strength to be able to hold her through that, because I hadn't had that kind of trauma. And it was easy for me. She was smart and willing, and just I always tell her, so easy to love, And for me, it was just natural to keep on trying to find those things that are going to be that salve and that soothing, and then she started being the person that was saying, let's go, let's do this, and I want to do this, and I want to revisit my childhood home, and I want to go, and all of these amazing things. And I just would say, great, let's do it, and I would make it happen. And so that's what I would say to people. There's two pieces. One is you have to be sensitive to when people are asking, but also, like, know that sometimes people ask in a way that isn't asking. It's a way that is, they're just dipping their toe in, because they're trying to feel if you're that person who's going to hear the request, and if you're going to be strong enough and brave enough to bring your bulldozer and to bring, and then it's also in this greater scheme of things, statistically, with the rape statistics of like 1 in 4, you might be the one, but you might be part of the 4. You might be part of the other 3. And it's like everybody has a skill set. And that's really what my documentary is about. It's not that it's a blueprint for how to do this healing. What it is it's an example of how 2 people came together, bringing what they had to go on this journey, which is just a unique journey to us. But because it is unique to us, it is universal in its invitation for others to do their own healing, because really everybody has skills to do this. And really all it takes is somebody who doesn't have a broken place to come together with someone who does have a broken place and say, we can do this together. Let's find our way. Let's find what makes us a unique team, a unique partnership, like in Dancing with the Stars. What is it that makes the partnership work? It's not necessarily that every partnership's going to work. And, you know, when you're dancing with somebody, it can be that that you're not really a great match. You know, it can be that too. And then you have to work really hard to make it work, because especially on Dancing with the Stars, because that's the one you got. So you got to make it work, you know? So I think it's that. It's like, just be sensitive, but also if you have any instinct that this person is calling for your help, just ask them. Do you want my help? Do you want my thoughts? Would you like to know what I'm thinking? Could I ask you some questions? Would you be open to me sharing something with you? Could we go to a therapist together? Could we talk this through? It's like, just ask, you know, start with that.
Yeah, I love that you say it's an invitation, because, you know, in society, whether it's trauma treatment, whether it's medical illness treatment, whatever it is, we have these prescriptions and we have these models, like this sort of one size fits all approach that we think is going to work for people, and it doesn't. We're so unique, we're so individual. And I love where, you know, you met her where she was at, and that is crucial. And then you figure out what uniquely inspires her and what her unique needs are. And she, like you said, what resonates. And that is such a gift when you can do that for someone else, because that really allows them to get post-traumatic growth, because it's coming truly from within them at a pace that is their own, and through this unconditional, you know, positive regard that, you know, we don't always get from our mothers, we don't always get from our parents growing up, and we lose that when we've experienced an assault of any sort, emotionally or physically. So I love that invitation, Melora. And, you know, you are obviously, you know, a brilliant storyteller, but the message of Thunder, Hunter, and Me seems to go to another level. And when people live with trauma, healing doesn't come from just telling a story. Healing happens when the victim can tell their story to someone who really sees them and understands, while holding them in this space of unconditional positive regard. And I have a feeling that one of the reasons your relationship with Hunter is so powerful is because you conveyed to Hunter, and I just heard you describe that you conveyed it, I see you, and your being here on this earth really matters to me. And I just, you know, wonder, like, do you agree with my observations?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, she, you know, she's remarkable, you know, and I'm grateful that I had the instinct to pick up the camera as early as I did, because what happened was I was just seeing this person who really, all she really needed was permission to grieve. Yeah. She needed permission to grieve, and she needed encouragement, and she needed to know that she wasn't going to die if she laid on her floor and cried for a week straight. And there was just a lot to overcome there. And when she would start to dip her toe into that, literally I would see 20 years fall off of her face, and just this incredible like tightness. And I often, when I was younger, I used to say people look like what they are. And what I meant by that, I didn't mean like the beautiful people or the nice people. And it was more like if you look at people's features, like I have a friend who had Asperger's when he was very young, now is a fully functioning adult. And I met him very young when he was still had some of those tendencies. And if you look at pictures of him when he was really more in the world of growing out of the Asperger's, his features are very pointy and very, very intense and very sharp and very, like sharp cheekbones and sharp nose and, and as time has gone on and he's an older, just more sort of integrated person, his features have softened so much. And that was really what I saw happening with Hunter. And I just said to her, like, I think we should do this for you, because when I started this, I didn't think like, oh, we're making a documentary. And I said, you're not going to remember how trapped you were, because I can tell you're going to speed through this. You're going to move through this. It's going to happen. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to happen because you're so ready for it. You're so hungry for it. You want it so bad. And you're just, the penny is dropping left and right, left and right. I bring one thing and it's just like, bam, bam. She had 50 years of life experience that she was bringing. And so that made her just have this incredible intelligence that's just different from like an 18-year-old or 19-year-old. It's just different, which is another reason that I totally respect and love and honor age, because we do garner things from more life experience.
Yes.
And so it was literally like just a gift that I had the instinct to pick up the camera, that she said yes to me doing that. Mm-hmm. And that then as time went on, I would say, and I didn't look at any of the footage. Like we were filming for 2 years and I was just keeping everything, but I wasn't in director mode. I was just in like gathering mode, because what I was doing was I was taking care of her and she was my priority, and I was kind of mommying her, and really more than anything, and giving her love and guidance and whatever. But so it's true that is what happened. I was blown away by her intelligence, her emotional availability, and her vulnerability and ability to be raw and to be so brave. She was so brave from like minute number one. And I guess I was the person that spoke the truth to her in a way no one ever had, when she was spouting off stuff that was just like she'll tell a story about how she said to me very early on, like maybe the first time we were together, like here at my house alone, she said something like she didn't know that word, and I was like, what? Like, she's super smart, and I was like, that's a technique that you're using to like seem like the victim because you're committed to that because that's worked for you. But you're 50 years old, so just look up the word. And like, I'm not going to be that person that's going to buy you saying, I don't know that word. I'm going to say, look it up and then get back to me.
Yeah.
And so she had to kind of show up for me in a different way.
Yeah.
Just in the same way that I showed up for her in a different way,
Beautiful. Yeah. It's true reciprocity. There's a Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He has a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And he talks about reciprocity, and it's true, that feeling of truly being seen and held in another person's heart. And I feel like, when we get that from another human, it's just there. You feel it. It's intangible. It's very real and pure. And it just, to me, this is, when I heard that the way that the story evolved was Hunter watched you on television as a child and wished your character Cindy would come through the television screen and rescue her. My first feeling was that's just such a universal feeling for those of us with trauma, because every one of us who has experienced trauma, we were children once. And if we lived through it to tell our stories, then we had a relationship in our lives that held our hands and really helped us survive. And, these relationships can be the community, an elder, a pet companion, pop star, television character. But since this experience with Hunter, I've thought about you and what that must have been like for you. And do you see your responsibilities as an actress differently?
Well, I think more than anything, I think as an actor, you feel like that is the most beautiful thing. As an adult actor, you think, oh, I hope I'm touching someone
Yeah.
and moving them to think differently or ask a different question or feel some hope or feel some lightness or feel some sweetness or feel some laughter or have some joy, as an adult. But what I think for me is cool is that that was a part that I had 2 weeks before said to my mom, you know what I really want to do is a show about a horse. And so Thunder is 2 weeks later, I got Thunder, and it's a show about a horse. And so it was a highlight in my young acting career as a child, because it really was a dream come true for me. It really was what I had really wanted and I asked for out loud, and then I got it. And I've never been recognized from Thunder by anybody else in my life. And when I think about that, just from an adult perspective, like, yes, as an adult actor, you have all the consciousness and all the intelligence and intellectual, stuff about touching people, moving people, whatever. And we as artists and poets and writers and musicians are supposed to be the people that make people question, make people go into the uncomfortable zone, or they watch us go into the uncomfortable zone. And because we're in the discomfort, we're comfortable being in discomfort, they can vicariously go into their own places of discomfort, joy, lightness, laughter, sensuality, sexuality, love, hate, revenge, all those things. But as a young child, I was just doing that out of pure joy, pure connection to what I wanted to do, this joyful delight of doing a show about a horse with this thing that I love to do, which was acting. And, and that was it, nothing else. And so there's something so sweet and so wonderfully reconnecting for me about that is the thing that needs to be the generator of all great art. You have to be connected to your own personal whatever the instigator is for that particular piece of art that you're involved in. Like for me with Dancing with the Stars, my intention was to reconnect with my child, the little girl joy of dancing, but it was also an opportunity for the world to get to know a little bit of Melora, not Melora through her characters, but who Melora is, which is why I was really committed to trying to bring my truth, even though it's a reality show, and reality shows are not documentaries. Reality shows are crafted. They are not real. They are the arc of the drama, and the entertainment is being shaped, and the narrative is being shaped in real time at all times. So it is not a real competition. It is not a real experience, but the experience of the dances, learning the dances under that kind of pressure, doing that and showing up that way for myself and for my partner and for the audience at large was real. Okay. And so those were my intentions for doing Dancing with the Stars. And I think that in those two places, I think I achieved those things. So I feel like I won, because for me, I just wanted to reignite my childhood joy of that and my dream of that feeling, which I'd got to do. And the joy of learning something that I've not done before. And then I wanted to share a little bit of my personal self so that people could see that this is who I am, and that maybe that would help them be able to digest Thunder Hunter and me a little bit better. Because, if you're looking at me and you're only looking at me through the eyes of Jan Levinson, or through the eyes of Trudy Monk, or through the eyes of Tammy Cashman, or through, my long career of characters, you don't know Melora. And I'm telling you, this documentary is just purely me. And Hunter. I mean, it's purely Hunter and me. and it is not a comedy, but it is full of light, and it is full of love, and it is full of joy and healing and heart. So that was important to me. So the answer is yes. I think about myself, in that way, of course, as an artist, but I also think that we have to just constantly stay true to like the center of our reason for doing what we did, what we've done, what we do.
Yeah, and I think you just describe for me, because I'm a therapist and my work has been around. I have a chapter in my book about ballroom dance and why I think it's so healing. I found it really interesting when I learned about you doing this work with Hunter, because when you're a victim of trauma, like being able to inhabit your body is really like difficult, because it's a reminder of a place of pain, a place where you weren't safe, where you didn't have control. And so your story gives a voice to Hunter's journey and how she struggled with close relationships because of her trauma history. And this is the area that you saw and accepted her and, gave her that love. But part of healing trauma is finding a way to be safe in your body again. And I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of ballroom dance, because you're with a partner, you're in this physical like proximity to a person, but you've got the music, the senses, and the movement all combined. And so I'm wondering, do you think now, because I've experienced that transformation of trauma from inhabiting my body in dance, what do you think about ballroom dance being able to help people overcome trauma now that you've danced in that setting?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is so true. The experience of it was so intimate. It is a very intimate experience. I even said to Artem at one point, I said, it's interesting that for me, I feel like this is more intimate than it would be for me to be naked doing a love scene with another actor. And he couldn't understand that because he's a dancer. He's a
Yes.
ballroom dancer. So for him, he was like, I don't understand that. That seems so much more intimate. You're naked, you're kissing someone, touching them. It's like, yeah, but as an actor, there are boundaries that I understand, and those boundaries are very clear in my mind, very clear in my being. They make me feel safe. And whereas this is something I've never done, I don't understand the boundaries totally, and so it's like, so I think absolutely that anything that can reacquaint you or just introduce you to a physical experience with another person that innately has in it boundaries, um, you know, then I think people with trauma in particular, and people without trauma, that can have a deeper understanding of like, you get to have this very intimate relationship with your own physical body,
Mm-hmm.
with all these boundaries that are put in place to keep you safe. And so, you can actually, once you start to understand the boundaries and you start to connect with the boundaries, then you start to feel that is what you can count on. You can count on that. And so when you're in the frame with somebody and you're like, your hips have to be connected to their hips, but you understand that that's different than when there's a sexual act that's happening, or when you're attracted to somebody. And I think for someone with trauma, then I would think, I don't know because I'm not a specialist in this, but I would think that would be very healing, because it would be like, oh, I have permission to feel my body close to another human's body without it meaning anything except that we're trying to create the correct form for the frame.
Yeah.
And that in doing that, we will have a better dance. So it seems to me like it could be very healing. And I think that's so cool that you have a chapter about that, because it sounds really really right on to me.
Yeah. So, Melora, I have to bring up your Paso Doble because when you were talking about the thing that you accomplished about letting people see you, Melora,
Mm,
and that was also what they're going to see in the docu-series. So the Paso Doble, of course, embodies the essence of power, sexuality, confidence. So for many of us, it's difficult to find that balance among these different parts of ourselves. And I feel you were able to capture all of these shades in your Paso Doble. It was just like, wow, you just came out there. Femininity, sexuality, power, confidence, empowerment really affected me. And so I want to know, like, how did that dance in particular, or did that dance in particular change you somehow?
well, it's interesting. It was a very, very exciting dance to learn to do. It felt good, as I was getting it, it felt good. I was particularly at a really good place in my own journey of Dancing with the Stars, which is a very personal, emotional journey of like stuff coming up and going away, and it just turns up so many things of your own personal stuff, belief systems and patterns and survival mechanisms. So I was in a really good place coming into that particular week of learning, because I had decided that that I just, that I had sort of seen the tenuousness of the show, and how really you could just be ejected at any time from like this airplane that you're on. And
Yes.
and so I was really committed to, I want to have every single minute of this experience. I don't want to miss a minute of this. And so I was very present. When you're freed up like that and you're really present like that, you just can draw in everything, and everything's kind of dropping in. And there's a lot of unfettered learning that happens. It's very fluid and very flowy. Um, and Artem is really good at the Paso Doble too. So I think I think he shines in that particular dance. And I think that, so I think that that also was good, because he's my teacher in that, and he was teaching me from the place that he connects to in that dance, which I think if you look at any of his dances from with other partners, you see that that is a place he shines. He just shines there. And so I think that was also super cool, because he's coming from a place of strength and confidence and experience and centeredness. And yeah, to me it just was it was an amazing dance. The music was great, the costume was great, the set was great. I had
Cape
come
was
from
great. The skirt was
the
great.
skirt. Well, the skirt was amazing, and the skirt was like a giant thing, because I had come from, having a little problem that happened with the week before, which was also very great for me. But I had been given, on Dancing with the Stars, you're always just slightly, what's the word? You're always slightly in a little bit of deprivation. It's very different than any other experience that you would have as an artist, because usually when you're the artist in anything, when I was on Broadway or any, everyone's always trying to give you what you need so that you can perform and be the star that you are. In
Mhm.
Dancing with the Stars, everything is just not really what you need at all times, and that leads right up to the show, where you don't really have enough time you don't have any time on the ballroom floor. You don't have any time in your costume besides dress rehearsal, which is 1 hour before the actual live show. Whereas when you're doing Broadway, you get to work in your costume, you get to feel your, the space in which you're going to work. You work with props, you work with, you have all of that time. You get to eat, at normal times. Like everything is slightly in a state of deprivation. It's part of how the show works. It's part of why it's successful as a competition show and as a reality show. So it's an interesting, thing to grapple with. And one of the things, I'm very grateful for my age again, because I have so much life experience that I could see this happening. And because it's not my first barbecue, I can be like, okay, so this is up to me, and how much, how do I pace myself, and I had to do all that myself. So so that was very interesting. but my point is that on Queen night, which was the week before the Paso Doble, I had a dress rehearsal with that overlay, that velvet overlay that I was wearing for Queen. It's very, very heavy. And so you as a dancer know that when you're dancing, you learn to turn and you know where your center is when you land based on what part of what it is what you're wearing on your feet and on your body. And so what I found in the dress rehearsal was that I would turn and land and then my skirt would follow and it would sort of like change my center.
Of course.
And though I was aware of it and able to work with it and able to grapple with it, it was fine. But it was definitely a thing to contend with, another thing to contend with on top of the 20 other things I have to contend with on Dancing with the Stars. So it was interesting. And then apparently the producers thought that my skirt was too high and they wanted to sew it. They wanted to sew it by like 5 inches. And I had a whole thing about I had to get my finger in my skirt like this to get it, because I do a lot of stuff with my skirt in the Queen dance. So I had to get I had to get it usually on one count. I had to go in and get my skirt and have it to be able to do stuff with it. And so I went into like freak out mode between dress rehearsal and rehearsal. I mean, the live show, they sewed up my skirt by 5 inches. And I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get my hand in there, which I had practiced with my rehearsal skirt, which was up as high as it was. Oh my God. So
Wow.
It actually made me go blank at the end of the dance. I actually dropped a step, like dropping a line in a scene. I dropped a step. I just completely dropped a step, which was fine because it still worked out okay. Yeah. But when Carrie Ann said, I think something went off and I don't really know what it is, don't tell me, she was right. Something went off. And what went off was I dropped a step. I just dropped it. And what it was is it was right after I have to grab my skirt in that one count. And so I grabbed my skirt. I got the skirt, but as soon as I got the skirt, I dropped the step and went on to the next step. And it was just one thing. It was a balance, so it didn't like mess up anything too much, but Artem had to completely shift. And then and I continued and then everything finished, but it was just, it's like, if I look back on it, it's like, I'm laughing because I'm just looking at him go, okay, so I guess we're here now.
Many people get stuck in their comfortable routines and they will tell themselves, I can't do it. I'm too old. So what would you tell those people who place limitations on themselves?
No, you're not. Like, I would just say, people there's that saying, follow your bliss. And I think that's a really good saying. People need to follow their bliss. And if there's something that they desire and that they want, then they should go after it. And there's no reason not to. People do incredible things all the time. And if you need inspiration, then find people who are doing those things and let their they're living vicariously through them or whatever, let that inspire you. So I would say, don't, it's okay to be scared, by the way. That's the other thing. Like, it's like, don't let your fear, that's a conversation for now too. But just, don't let your fear limit you. And fear is a great controller, as we can see with the pandemic. Sure. It's a great controller. And you have to know that, but we can't like stuff our fear down and pretend it doesn't exist. We have to actually confront it and deal with it and kind of wrap our arms around it. Like almost like it's like the way you would deal with a little child having a nightmare, and we as adults, we're not so kind to ourselves as we would be to our child who has a nightmare. We're like, oh, just get over it and move on. It's like, well, no, that's going to make it so you can't do what you want to do. But if you wrap your arms around your own self and say, it's okay, it's appropriate that you would be scared. This is something you've never tried. I mean, if anyone thinks I wasn't scared on Dancing with the Stars, they're crazy. I was scared every single week, multiple times, while I was learning the dance, while I was doing the dance, while I was performing the dance, after. I mean, it was a constant relationship with fear and my fear. Yeah. So, and the other thing I tell my children is I tell them, like, nerves and excitement feel very similar. Mm-hmm. And you can let nerves which equals pain, which equals fear, right? Nerves are really about fear. You can let nerves freeze you and stop you, but you can also use nerves. You can use them like excitement, and you can let them be rocket fuel and take you to the moon. So don't sit on your fear and act like it doesn't exist, or try to pretend it doesn't exist, and don't let it freeze you. Use it, let it, and connect to that feeling, because the feeling state of nerves is very similar to excitement. And if you just connect to the two and you just let it be that engine, it doesn't mean it's going to go away. You've got to include it. You can't try to push it away. You have to include it, embrace it, and let it be your rocket fuel for doing those things that you're scared to do.
Yeah, and I think it captures like ballroom dancing movement. A lot of times, a lot of the celebrities and the contestants, all of you, some of you would tear up, some of you would have these moments where you processed, grief through the dance. And I feel like that's the beauty of also dance, is that it brings you into touch with a lot of feelings that maybe we don't give ourselves permission to express. But because you've got sort of the safety of movement and music, which helps us get into more of a relaxed state, it allows people to have some emotional freeing.
For
So I,
sure.
I think you showed us that, Melora, along with a lot of other things on the show. And I'm really excited for your docuseries Thunder Hunter and Me to come out. And I'm just grateful that I was able to chat with you about two areas that are particular passions of mine, and you embodied sort of the coming together of them in in a way that really just really struck me. So I'm
Oh,
excited
thank
about that.
you. Thank you. Well, I'm excited for you to see it too. I can't wait for you to see it. It's very beautiful, and I really hope it will just inspire a lot of healing for a lot of people. That's my intention behind making it.